So what if I told you that just 5 minutes of watching cartoons every morning is like mathematically proven to add $14,000 to your yearly
I
salary?
mean, it sounds totally absurd.
Yeah.
But yeah, today we're looking at what honestly might be the ultimate life hack.
Right. We are unpacking this massive stack of sources, articles, interviews, some deep research, all centered around this really fascinating conversation with Thomas Eastman.
Yeah, and for those who don't know, he's a master of languages and a highly successful businessman.
Exactly. And his story is essentially this blueprint for completely dismantling the way we've all been taught to learn.
It really challenges the entire foundation of traditional education. I mean, the mission for you in this deep dive is to explore these practical, non-traditional techniques for mastering a language.
Or really any complex skill.
Totally. We're moving entirely away from grammar theory and textbooks. Instead, we're going to look at the mechanics of natural learning, the neuroscience behind microhabits, and the massive financial return on investment that comes with bilingualism.
Because the data shows this is definitely not just an academic exercise. Far from it.
Right.
This is a framework for unlocking your full professional potential and really sidestepping the massive cost of personal regret.
Yeah, but I think to understand the solution, we have to first look at why the standard approach fails almost everyone.
Right, which brings us to Tomas's early life. Our sources detail his time in Colombia, where he was taking these, supposedly top-tier English classes.
Oh yeah, the classic classroom experience.
Exactly. He was memorizing the absolute basics, sitting at a desk repeating, yellow, red, chicken.
Just completely isolated nouns, divorced from any real-world context whatsoever.
Which is how almost all of us are taught. It's entirely theoretical.
It is. But the breaking point for him comes at age 9 when his family moves to Oklahoma.
Right. Culture shock.
A massive culture shock. Suddenly, that sterile classroom vocabulary completely fails him. He describes this intense period of isolation. He's the only kid who doesn't speak the language, just dropped into this environment with very few Spanish speakers.
The social friction of that has to be immense.
Oh, totally.
It has to be terrifying for a 9-year-old. You can't ask where the bathroom is. You can't play with the other kids.
You're just totally isolated.
Right. And the sources note he spent his early days just constantly asking, what? Until he just, couldn't take the awkwardness anymore.
So he pivots.
Yeah. As a defense mechanism to survive the school day, he just started laughing and saying yes to absolutely everything people said to him.
Which is a pure survival response, though it famously backfires on him.
Oh, the after-school story.
Yeah, he recounts this specific moment where a teacher asks him something, and he just gives his default smiling, yes. And he finds out later he had literally just volunteered himself for a bunch of grueling after-school work.
Man, that's rough.
It is, but that was the moment he realized the theoretical foundation he got in Colombia was completely useless without context.
Right. And that brings up his core metaphor for language acquisition, which honestly completely shifted how I view learning.
It's a great metaphor.
He argues that traditional schooling teaches a language the same way you might try to teach someone to swim by, like analyzing strokes on a chalkboard.
Which sounds ridiculous when you say it out loud.
Right. You sit in a dry classroom for years, you look at the mechanics of a freestyle stroke, you memorize the angles of the elbow and the breathing intervals.
And then, what, 5 years later, you are finally thrown into the deep end of the pool?
Exactly. And you immediately start drowning.
Because the brain has zero sensory experience of the water. You have no idea about the buoyancy, the temperature.
The panic of not being able to breathe.
Yes. His philosophy is that you actually need to be thrown in the water first. You need to flail around and just figure out how to keep your head up.
Survival first, technique later.
Exactly. The theory, the perfect angle of the elbow, that comes much later. The brain basically requires the stress of the environment to trigger adaptation.
It kind of reminds me of trying to learn how to ride a bicycle by reading a physics textbook about balance, gravity, and momentum.
Oh, that's a perfect analogy.
You can memorize all the mathematical formulas, you can perfectly understand the gravity of the situation on paper, but the second you actually get on that seat, you are going to scrape your knees.
You're going down.
Yeah. You just cannot intellectualize the feeling of unsteadiness. You have to physically experience it.
And that physical experience is what actually forces the neural pathways to rewire themselves.
Right.
Tomás describes this specific turning point after months of this awkward, stressful immersion in Oklahoma. He calls it the spark.
The spark, yeah.
It was the moment he woke up and realized he had just experienced an entire dream in English.
Wow. Which means his unconscious mind had surrendered, right?
Completely.
It stopped acting as a translator between Spanish and English and just started operating natively in the new environment.
Precisely. The environmental stress literally forced his brain to adapt for survival.
Okay, but here's the challenge for anyone listening.
All right, the practical application.
Most people cannot just uproot their lives, quit their jobs, and move to Oklahoma or Paris to force that kind of total immersion.
No, of course not.
So how do we simulate that panic, that immersion, without buying a plane ticket?
Well, this is where his daily blueprint becomes so critical. And it starts with what he calls contextual consumption.
Right, the cartoons.
Yes. For Tomás, the secret weapon for simulating immersion was cartoons. He used them for English, and then years later, when he wanted to master French, he went right back to cartoons.
I mean, it sounds silly, but
If you look closely at how the human brain naturally acquires its first language, cartoons are actually an ingenious hack.
how so?
They are engineered for a developing brain. The animation is highly visual, the emotional context is vastly exaggerated, and the action is very literal.
Okay, that makes sense.
So when you watch a cartoon in a foreign language, you completely bypass the need for a vocabulary list. You absorb meaning exactly the way the toddler does.
Okay, let me stop you there, though. I can totally see how watching Wile E. Coyote might teach you the word for run or fall.
Sure.
The music gets frantic, the coyote runs off a cliff, your brain maps the sound to the action. But, and we'll get to this, Tomás eventually becomes a stop-loss guy for a multi-million-dollar hedge fund.
Right.
Cartoons do not teach you words like derivatives or margin call or escrow. How does 5 minutes of cartoons bridge the gap to high-level financial fluency?
That is such a good question, and it gets to the crucial distinction between the operating system and the software.
Okay, unpack that.
Cartoons build the fundamental neural architecture. They teach your brain the rhythm, the syntax, and the emotional tone of the language. They make you comfortable in the water.
The operating system.
Exactly. Once that foundation is native, once your brain stops translating it, just actually understands the structure, adding specialized vocabulary like margin call, it's just slotting a new word into an already fluent structure.
Oh, I see.
You don't learn high finance terms through cartoons, obviously, but cartoons give you the intuitive linguistic framework to learn those terms naturally when you encounter them in the real world.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. The cartoon is the foundation of the house, and the finance vocabulary is just like the furniture you move in later.
That is exactly it. But, consumption is only half the battle. You also have to produce the language.
Right. Output.
And the sources point out this really bizarre problem Tomás faced when he eventually moved back to Colombia.
Oh, yeah, because his English was too good.
Yeah. He would intuitively correct his local teachers, and they felt so threatened by a teenager having better pronunciation that they would literally bully him and kick him out of class.
That is wild, but it completely removed his ability to practice socially.
Right. So to keep those neural pathways firing, he adopted this habit of talking to himself out loud constantly.
Just walking around muttering to himself.
He admits he looked entirely unhinged doing it, but the mechanism is brilliant. By talking to himself, he completely eliminated the social friction.
He didn't have to worry about offending an insecure teacher.
Exactly, or finding a native speaker who had the patience to talk to him.
He also advocates for finding an accountability partner, if you can, right?
Yes, because it turns the learning process from this isolated, heavy burden into a shared social bond.
But the most controversial part of his blueprint, and the one I want to really dig into here, is his time frame.
5 minutes.
Yeah, Tomás completely rejects the idea of grinding through grammar workbooks for 2 hours a day. Instead, he uses the 5-minute rule. He insists on dedicating just 5 to 10 minutes a day to the language.
Which sounds deeply counterintuitive to everything we are taught about hard work.
It sounds impossible. I mean, if I want to master a complex skill, say learning Mandarin, or even learning to play the piano, can I really do that in the time it takes to brew a cup of coffee?
It sounds like a gimmick.
Right. I buy the argument for contextual learning, but 5 minutes barely gives me enough time to open an app or review a few flashcards. How is 5 minutes actually moving the needle toward fluency?
So you have to look at the neuroscience of the stress response here.
Okay.
When you sit down with the intention of studying a difficult, frustrating new skill for 2 hours, your brain registers that as a massive threat.
Because it's hard work.
Because you are expending huge amounts of cognitive energy. And in response, your body releases cortisol, the stress hormone.
Right.
Over time, your unconscious mind begins to literally associate the act of learning French or playing the piano with exhaustion and pain.
So your brain literally starts fighting your own ambition.
Exactly.
Like you start procrastinating, you suddenly feel this huge urge to clean your kitchen instead of studying because your brain is trying to protect you from the cortisol spike.
That is the exact mechanism of burnout.
Right.
But 5 to 10 minutes? That is way too short to trigger a massive stress response.
It's too quick to be painful.
Right, it feels like play. It
Yeah.
keeps the brain in a state of curiosity rather than a state of threat.
Huh.
And while 5 minutes might not seem like enough time to learn a lot of vocabulary, what you are actually building is unshakable consistency.
Building the habit.
Yes. Frequency is far more powerful than duration when it comes to rewiring neural pathways. Over a span of years, the person who does 5 minutes every single day without fail will vastly outperform the person who binges for 3 hours on a Sunday and then burns out for a month.
Wow. Okay, so we have this 5-minute daily habit. We have the cartoons. We have the talking to ourselves.
The micro-learning toolkit?
Right. But how does that actually translate into the real world? Like, being bilingual is a fun party trick, but how does this habit actually pay the rent?
Well, the sources give us some incredibly concrete financial data on this.
The $14 case stat.
Yeah. In the United States alone, Latinos who speak English make a baseline average of $14,000 more per year. And that is completely independent of their specific profession.
That is wild.
But that $14,000 is just the floor. That is the baseline premium the market pays for the ability to communicate across barriers.
Right.
But Tomás's own career trajectory shows how that advantage scales into something much, much larger.
Let's talk about that. When Tomás was just 17 years old, a first-semester university student, he attended a day trading conference.
Right.
And the presenter was a Venezuelan-American guy named Marcelo. Most 17-year-olds would just sit in the back and take notes, you know?
Keep their heads down.
Yeah. But Tomás realized Marcelo's English was stronger than his Spanish. So Tomás just walked up to him and confidently started speaking English.
You just bridged the gap.
He did, and he talked his way into a $20 translation job right there on the spot.
And see, that seemingly insignificant $20 job is what placed him in a room he otherwise never would have entered.
The compounding effect.
Yes, because he was in that environment, communicating fluently, he caught the attention of an American multi-million-dollar fund manager named Kurt.
The millionaire in Colombia.
Right. Kurt was this highly successful solo operator living in Colombia, but he had a glaring weakness.
Yeah, he was a brilliant trader when it came to making money, but he was apparently terrible at keeping it.
Exactly.
He would get greedy and refuse to exit bad trades. He needed a psychological anchor. And out of everyone in that city, he hires a 17-year-old kid to be his stop-loss guy.
It's crazy.
Tomás's entire job was basically to force this millionaire out of bad trades before he lost too much money.
And why Tomás?
Yeah.
Not because a 17-year-old possessed some profound macroeconomic wisdom.
Right, obviously not.
Kurt hired him because Tomás was the only local who could speak to him on his level,
Yeah.
both culturally and linguistically. Tomás provided a bridge of trust.
Trust. Which brings us to how this compounding effect works in Tomás's current business today.
The real estate firm.
Yeah, he runs a highly successful real estate firm in Medellin now, dealing heavily with foreign investors. We're talking about clients looking to invest $3 million in a foreign country.
High stakes.
Very high stakes. And when the stakes are that high, the technical details of the property are almost secondary. Trust is the only currency that matters.
Think about the psychology of a foreign investor risking millions. They are terrified of being misunderstood or taken advantage of.
Absolutely.
So when Tomás speaks their language natively, when he understands their cultural hesitations, their humor, their nonverbal cues, he neutralizes that terror. He becomes a safe harbor.
Yeah, Tomás actually states plainly in the sources that in his industry, English is the literal difference between selling $100,000 a year and $10 million a year.
It's a massive multiplier.
It is not an extracurricular skill. It is the entire engine of his wealth. But, and this is what I want to ask you earlier, you mentioned that this creates a geometric return on investment over time.
Yes, the geometric ROI.
How does that actually work mechanically? Why doesn't the monolingual person just stay like 10% behind? Why do they get completely left in the dust?
It comes down to the mechanics of compounding networks.
Okay.
If you look at a linear career path over 1 year, the person who speaks a second language and the person who doesn't might look fairly similar. Maybe the bilingual person gets a slightly better bonus rate.
Maybe the $14K bump.
Exactly. But stretch that over 10 years. That one $3 million deal Tomás closes because of his English introduces him to 3 other wealthy expats.
Oh, wow.
Those 3 introduce him to 10 more. The bilingual person is accessing entirely new, lucrative networks that branch out exponentially.
The web just keeps expanding.
Right. The monolingual person is stuck climbing a single ladder, while the bilingual person is building a web. Over a decade, the opportunity cost of not learning the language makes you completely unreachable by the competition.
Okay, so the financial incentive is massive. The micro-learning techniques are super practical. But, and I think we all know this, nobody maintains a daily habit for 15 years just because they read a good statistic.
Yo, data doesn't drive daily action.
Right. The mechanics of learning are totally useless without a psychological engine to drive them.
And this is where we have to examine the mindset.
Yeah.
The sources reveal a defining, really painful moment in Tomás's youth that provided the fuel for all of this hustle.
The story about his dad.
Yes. His father had worked for a company for over 15 years. He gave him total loyalty, and then a new CEO came in and just unceremoniously fired him.
Yeah, Tomás describes the visceral reaction to that injustice. Like, he actually called his dad's ex-boss, crying on the phone, demanding to know why they would humiliate his father like that.
It's heartbreaking.
It was the crushing realization that you can do everything right, you can play by all the rules, and still have your security completely wiped out by someone else's whim.
Right. And that loss of control forced Tomás to make a decision. He decided he was going to harness his own power so he would never be at the mercy of another person.
It is the pursuit of becoming undeniable.
Undeniable, exactly. And a key part of becoming undeniable is extreme efficiency.
Okay, how so?
Tomás leans heavily into the concept of imitating experts. If you want to master a language or build a business, do not let your ego convince you that you need to invent a new method.
Just copy what works.
Simply copy the habits of the people who have already achieved what you want.
He uses this fantastic analogy in the sources about pushing a rock.
Oh, the cube versus the sphere.
Yeah. If your goal is to move a massive stone cube, hard work is just putting your shoulder against the flat side and shoving with all your might.
Sweating, exhausting yourself.
Right? And maybe you move it a few feet a day. You can proudly say you are working hard. But smart work, which is the result of imitating experts, is taking a chisel and spending your time knocking the corners off that cube until it becomes a sphere.
I love that.
Yeah.
It requires a different kind of effort up front. But once it is round, the momentum does the work for you.
Exactly.
But make no mistake, chiseling still requires showing up. It still requires waking up and facing the difficulty. Which brings us to a fundamental philosophy Tomás highlights about the nature of pain.
Right, the contrast between the pain of effort and the pain of regret.
Because you cannot live a life completely free of pain. The universe just doesn't allow it.
Right. Choose your hard.
Exactly. You have to choose your discomfort. Do you choose the temporary daily pain of effort? The 5 minutes of sounding foolish while you learn French?
Yeah?
The awkwardness of making a mistake?
Yeah.
Or do you choose the permanent, crushing pain of regret? Waking up at 70 years old and realizing you left your potential on the table because you wanted to be comfortable.
I think the most striking example of this in the sources isn't even a business story. It's Lionel Messi.
The soccer player.
Yeah. Arguably the greatest soccer player in history. Messi recently gave an interview where he admitted his deepest professional regret is not learning English earlier in his career.
Wow.
He had all the money, all the tutors, all the time in the world, but he admits he was just too lazy. And now, operating as a global businessman in Miami, he sits in rooms where he cannot directly communicate with half the people at the table.
That's fascinating.
Right. If Lionel Messi, a guy who has achieved the absolute pinnacle of his field, feels the stinging pain of unrealized potential, it proves that the cost of regret comes for everyone.
Because the pain of effort is an investment that pays dividends. But the pain of regret is a massive debt that just compounds interest until the end of your life.
Wow, yeah. And look, when you are putting in that daily effort, people are going to notice. Sometimes they are going to laugh at your accent or mock your ambition.
Oh, absolutely.
It might be a jealous coworker or, an insecure teacher in Colombia who kicks you out of class. But when that happens, remember Tomás's golden rule.
Which is?
A true expert, someone who actually has the $1 million business or speaks 3 languages fluently, will never, ever laugh at someone who is trying to improve.
That is so true.
Only insecure people do that. If someone mocks your 5-minute habit, they are just projecting their own lack of discipline onto you.
It is entirely a reflection of their own limitations. They're sitting in the stands critiquing The person who actually had the courage to step into the arena.
Exactly. Wait, I promised myself I wouldn't just agree with everything you say, but that is perfectly stated.
I'll take the compliment.
So what is the ultimate takeaway for you listening right now?
Bringing it all together.
Right. It means it is time to throw away the heavy grammar workbooks that make you feel like you are drowning in the deep end. It means immersing yourself in the context of cartoons. Talk to yourself out loud to remove the social friction.
And keep it to a strict 5 or 10 minutes a day.
Right, so your brain actually associates the learning with play instead of a cortisol-inducing threat.
Yeah.
Emulate the experts who have chiseled their stone cubes into spheres before you.
Yes.
And above all else, choose the 5 minutes of effort today to buy your freedom from regret tomorrow.
And if we look at the underlying mechanism of this 5-minute rule, it leads to a really fascinating realization to end on.
What's that?
This isn't just about learning Spanish or Mandarin. The exact same neurological principles apply to any intimidating frontier.
Oh, I see what you mean.
Think about the things we tell ourselves are too late to learn. Coding, understanding artificial intelligence, or even doing the daily work of repairing a failing relationship.
Right. The language of the next decade might not be French. It might be the language of AI prompting.
Exactly. But the mechanism to master it will be identical.
A 5-minute rule.
Yes. If you stare at the massive 2-hour mountain of learning a new technology, your brain will flood with cortisol and you will retreat.
But what if you just watched a 5-minute visual breakdown of a coding concept every morning with your coffee?
You bypass the threat response entirely. You build the fundamental architecture of the new skill, intuitively, day by day, until the specialized vocabulary just snaps into place. You let consistency do the heavy lifting.
Stop thinking of the successful, highly skilled version of yourself as this stranger you're trying to become.
Because that person is already inside you, waiting to be revealed. Every 5-minute session isn't about adding something foreign. It's just chiseling away the stone to reveal the masterpiece that's already there.
So think about whatever that massive, heavy physics textbook is in your life right now. Put the book down, get on the bicycle, let yourself wobble for just 5 minutes today. That is our deep dive. Keep chiseling, and we'll see you next time.